it just wasn't working. And I knew it wasn't working, but I was like determined, I'm gonna make this work. And then I lasted a week. My determination got me to be there for a whole week. And then, they call my agent and say, "Oh, I'm sorry. Tell her not to come in tomorrow." Welcome to Acting Smarter Now. I'm Lydia Nicole, actor, producer, and your acting career coach, dedicated to helping you cut through the noise, own your craft, and transform your career from undiscovered to unstoppable. Got a question for you. What if the next breakthrough in your career came from someone seeing you clearly enough to ask you the right questions? Well, today is a little special episode because the tables are turned. Yes, they are. I am joined by legendary Hollywood voice and dialect coach Denise Woods, whose clients include some of the most powerful performers in the industry. And she's also my teacher. And today she is stepping into the role of interviewer to pull out my story, my process, and the truth behind acting smarter now. She's got so many questions. I'm scared. Let's go to the interview.
Lydia, welcome, 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 welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome back. I should
Thank
say.
you,
You
Denise.
are
Thank
so welcome,
you.
but the table is turned. The camera has turned. Now you are the focus of this interview, which is it's a godsend. It's a delight. It's an honor because once I realized who you were and the depth of your artistry, the depth of your humanity, the depth of your love with a capital L, I just knew that the world needed to know more about who you are. I mean, we see you coming in and out on social media, and you've got this wonderful movement, I should call it. It's a movement. It's not a brand. It's a movement. It's a call to action for actors that we will talk about. But first of all, I need to know when you got the bug as an artist.
Oh my gosh. I was 5 years old. I was in first grade in Catholic school, and they had a Christmas pageant, and I remember sitting in the balcony of our little not theater, but it was like where they held church. They held everything in this little area. And I was in the balcony and they were doing the show, and I remember turning to the nun and going, "How come I'm not up there?" That was it. I just remember that. I was like, I want to do that. I didn't know what that was, but I wanted to do that.
And did it stay in the church realm until you branched out and figured out that that extended beyond the walls of that wonderful Catholic church? What was the next step?
At like 7 or 8, I was doing little skits in the basement of my father, he was a super in the Bronx.
Well, let's explain to our audience what a super is, because we're from New York.
It's the maintenance man, the building manager, but at that time they call him the super,
Right.
el super. Behind his apartment in the basement, there was like a little courtyard,
Oh,
and it had some stairs. And so I would put like a sheet, and then I would do like a little play, make the kids come and watch me perform. And I remember one of the first things I did was I acted out Sam Cooke's Frankie and Johnny. That was the first thing I remember doing, because music was also part of me as a little kid. I was really ingrained in music, and without seeing anybody doing it other than the TV and watching the musicals and stuff. So it was really a big deal. It was like, okay, I'm going to do a production. Let's go.
how did music play a huge part in your household? Did you hear the records that your mom and dad played? Was it constantly being played in the household?
I come from a single home. My mother, I would go to my father on the weekends, but I was with my mom. And my mother at the time, she had albums, and she would order them. I don't know if you remember, you could order so many records a month. It was like a record club. And so she would get these records, and when she was out the house, I would play them. I would look at them, and I just was enthralled. And then, probably about the age of 10, I got a little kid record player, that played 45s. I would go to the record store that was on our block, and I would buy little 45s with my money.
This is wonderful. So would you say music was your entree into knowing what performance was? I mean, I would imagine you had. I'm imagining, but had you ever been to a play by this time? A real bona fide play production?
At that time, no, because I went to my first play at Radio City when in seventh grade, so I must have been 12. That was my first production, not play because they showed a movie, but they had the Rockettes and stuff. So that was the first time I went to something magical like that.
What kind of effect did it have on you?
Oh my God, it was huge. And I think I went to go see A Christmas Carol. That might have been the second play that I saw with my school. We went downtown and saw Christmas Carol. But yeah, that was big. That was big. And we had a fantastic teacher named Mr. Auditari, and in the fourth grade, he really ingrained art in us. Like, we would listen to theater in radio, on the radio. He would put on these little productions, and that's where I got my first taste of being on stage. Was a little, I want to say it was like an Easter play, or that we did, and I got to bring out a cake, and so I was acting silly, and the audience laughed. I was done. I was like, "Yeah, this is it." So that was my first time that I remember being on stage, and then after that, I would be in little skits and stuff in school, in Catholic school. But Mr. Atari was the one who he really just made it available. And then in seventh grade, I had a fantastic teacher, Brother D. Actually, eighth grade. I had him in seventh grade, but in eighth grade, I wanted to go to the High School of Performing Arts. And so I sent for the application, get the application. They said you have to have a monologue. I didn't know what a monologue was.
For the listeners that don't know, this is all in New York City. You
Yes,
were born and raised in New York
in
City,
Spanish Harlem.
in
Yes.
East Harlem, which was known then back in the day as Spanish Harlem. But go ahead. So go ahead.
Had no idea. I said, Brother D, I need to do a monologue. What's a monologue? And he was so gracious. He took me to the library on the next block, the public library, and sat with me it went into the night. We were there till it was closing, and he went through plays with me, and we finally found a play that I could do a monologue from. It was from a Stage Door, and he worked with me. I'll never forget it. I'll always be grateful for him.
There's always that first teacher that is an artist and a teacher and introduces students to art, to magic, to performing arts and visual arts, and they really are angels, because if you can just go back and say that was when it happened, that's when I enlightened and felt it sometimes feels like an outer body experience, that you are in another world. You're taken from the everyday world that you live in, and escorted to this magical world where there's infinite imagination. Tell me a bit about what East Harlem and Harlem was like growing up in Harlem.
Oh my God. Well, first of all, on my block, summertime, it was a movie, a constant movie. People were acting out. I used to sleep on the fire escape with my blanket so that I wouldn't miss anything. No matter what time of the day or night, there was always some kind of drama. So it was always showtime on my street. And so, yeah, it was hot. And then we had a lot of impromptu dances, impromptu block parties. We didn't really start having official block parties until I moved out. But we had these impromptu block parties. Somebody would turn on music, and everybody would start dancing. And at the time, my mother used to sell fried food in the streets to make money for our Catholic school tuition. That was her thing in the summer. So she'd be selling food and everybody would be dancing, and it was always right around where our stoop was. And so people would buy their stuff, be dancing, pull out their little drinks. My mom used to sell sodas, so then they would get their little liquor and then pour it in the cans. It was ridiculous. It was the best time. I had the best time as a kid. Love summertime.
The imagination that it must have fostered, the characters that you were surrounded by.
Well, I did the characters. I would mimic them. I applied to the performing arts high school, but I didn't get in.
Hmm.
And so I ended up going to Brandeis High School, and I didn't really start acting until I was in 12th grade. And I had this most amazing teacher, Miss Borsdorf, and she opened stuff up for me. She was my angel, like the whole year. Alice Borsdorf.
Okay.
And she was this petite woman. She was tiny and young, fiery, and just was an artist. And she really did a lot for me because she got to direct the spring play, and some other, one of the dance teachers got to direct the fall play. And so she encouraged us to audition for the fall play, which was Sweet Charity. And so I auditioned for it, and I didn't get one of the leads. I got a dancer, and I was like, I don't do that. And so I went back to her. I said, Miss Borsdorf, they gave me a dancer role. That's not going to work for me. And so I turned it down. I said, thank you very much, but I will not be in your show. And so when the spring came, she was doing Five on the Black Hand Side play. And so she cast me as the young lead girl. And I was like, okay, now we're good. Now we're good. But during that year, she had created a group of us to we were called the Matchless Players, and we worked with the American Cancer Society, and we came up with skits that we would go do at public schools all over the city. So she would book us, and certain days we'd get out of class and we would go do the play wherever it was. If it was in the Bronx, if it was in Brooklyn, it didn't matter. The seven of us would go and do the show wherever we were. And it was fantastic.
How did you get there? Would you go on the subway, or did she?
Yeah, we went on the subway. No, we went on the subway. Yeah, no, we were New York kids, public school kids. We didn't have no bus. And then in the springtime, she had an acting class, which I was in, and she would bring performers from Lincoln Center to come and do pieces of shows. And they did a piece from Ceremonies in Dark Old Men. There was another, maybe, I don't remember. I just remembered she would bring these performers to do pieces of their show for us. And then we got to talk to them. It was amazing. But she also encouraged us to go audition for Broadway shows. So we would get the backstage. I believe it was backstage at the time, showbiz and backstage, and we'd have to go looking for casting notices, open calls. And I remember auditioning for The Wiz. I auditioned for Hair. I didn't get anything, but and her thing was, don't expect to get anything. You're going for the experience. So we got to be in the room with all these professional actor, dancers, singers, and get a number and just show up and go up there and stink up the room. But it was amazing. It was just, she opened us up to so much in that year.
It really sort of gives a backstory to where you eventually got to. There's an element of community and giving back, and not just an element of, oh, let me get an agent and become a star. From day one, it really feels like there's an element of, I'm an artist. I love the craft of acting. I love being on a stage. I love the process. Was there a lot of craft that she taught?
Well, not really. We did a lot of games, a lot of theater games. I didn't really start learning the craft until the next year after I graduated and I started Fordham University at Lincoln Center. A friend of mine, Leslie Thurston, turned me on to this place called the Community. Oh, I can't remember, something community. And there was a teacher there. Her name was Anna Panero, amazing. And she was the one who started teaching me craft. Because of her, I got Uta Hagen's book, Respect for Acting. She was a student of Warren Robertson. So she was a peer of Larry Moss. And Larry Moss substituted for her a couple of times when she had to go away. And so, but she really was the one that, she had us doing monologues and we would bring them in and she would critique them. She also had us go out to restaurants. Like there was the Bagel Nosh, which was around, where she taught was on 41st Street. I think it was the Foundation for the Creative Community. I think that's what it was called. Anyway, it was on 41st off of Broadway, going up to 8th Avenue, I think. And around the corner was the Bagel Nosh. So she would send us there to sit and listen to people's conversations and then come back and do characters and take some of the dialogue that we were listening to and create a story. And I will tell you that I've used that exercise throughout my career.
Have you always taught while you were acting simultaneously? Because we will get to your acting career, which is quite robust back in the day. But have you always taught simultaneously while you were an actor? Did you always know that there was this need for pedagogy and you to deliver to younger actors coming up behind you?
I'm going to back up for a second. So when I got to high school, I made my way to WBLS radio, and I ended up staying there 5 years. And while I was there, I learned about giving and being around art, musical artists and stuff. And so it was it really fed me because I was mentored by Hal Jackson and Frankie Crocker and Wanda Ramos, and Hal was a big proponent in always giving back.
I have to interject because I am a New Yorker, and every New Yorker of our generation knew exactly what WBLS was, the FM station, and Frankie Crocker, the disc jockey, and Hal Jackson, the iconic Hal Jackson. And for you as a teenager to be in that circle.
And I will say this, and you got to be under Hal Jackson as one of Hal's talented teens,
Absolutely.
which I did not know till recently.
Exactly. Exactly. We've got so much synergy here and so many shared experiences that are truly testaments to who we've become because we had great mentors. And I'm telling you, Hal Jackson's reach in terms of young African American, Latino girls and young boys, but particularly young women in New York, in the New York area. And then, of course, it went national, the Miss Talented
And then
Teen, and then
international. Yes.
international. It mushroomed into something big. And I was in the second one of it in 1972 and didn't realize that you were there during the shortly thereafter.
Well, I came in 73. Yeah,
Okay.
I started working at the station in 73, and then I started working with the pageant in 75.
Got you. Got you. I was gone by then. But the lasting impact of having mentors and just people and great teachers, that's the theme that I'm hearing. Great teachers, great mentors, people who are passionate about their art and want to share it with the generations behind them. And that's what, what it seems to me that you're doing with your your movement right now? I mean, there's a lot that, and we'll come back. I just want to jump because they really go hand in hand. I want to jump to what this is, acting smarter now. I want you to tell me what it is and why it is and why you've decided to go this route as opposed to becoming an acting teacher.
Well, I think there are a lot of incredible acting teachers. I don't think that's my calling. For me, I started teaching actors branding and business when I was with Roy London and I was with Roy 9 years. So Roy London was a teacher in Los Angeles who became a teacher because of Ivana Chubbuck and a couple of others of friends. He had coached her on something. He had come out to Los Angeles. He had coached her on something. She recommended, she said, you should be a teacher. He said, well, if you get me the students, I will. And that's how he started teaching. He'd never advertised. It was always word of mouth. So you didn't get in his class unless you knew somebody who had his phone number. His phone number was not listed. And so he was teaching. He taught Brad Pitt. He worked with Gina Davis. He worked with Forrest Whitaker. He really gave Sharon Stone her second career because when she started, she was an ingenue, but he made her a movie star with Basic Instinct. That was all Roy. Julie Brown, the comedian Julie Brown. There were so many people who came through Roy's class, and from that, so many actors who started teaching their own classes. Ivana started, Ken Lerner, wonderful actor. All of these wonderful actors who started their own classes. Cynthia Baines, who teaches young people. Just a lot of people came under Roy, but Roy, I was probably in the class maybe 3 years at that time, and he said to me, you need to teach these students about the business of acting because you are really good at it. And I was, because I had gotten my education from working in the music business. So I knew about branding. I knew, how to show up. And if you wanted to work as an actor, you had to be very specific in what you were selling. Most actors, and one of the things Roy would always say to the class was, stop trying to be the whole salad. Pick a vegetable and stick with that. If you're the cucumber, be the cucumber. They will come and they will tell you, we want cucumber soup, we want cucumber salad. They will tell you, but be that vegetable. And so I would teach periodically the new students in Roy's class for $50 a Saturday. And I would literally, we would start out where it would be like they were coming to an audition. And I would, and it was individual. I didn't do a class thing because everybody had their own different stuff. So when they came in, I met them like I was a casting director, talked to them, and then they left. And then I had them come back in and we talked about how they showed up, what was missing, what they needed. I went through their headshots. I went through their resume, and that's what I did. So he would turn to me periodically. It's time for a class. It's time for you to do another class. So it wasn't something that it occurred to me, hey, start doing that. I just did it because he told me to do it. But I was always doing that with people.
He recognized it was in your DNA because you knew about sales, you knew about PR, you knew about marketing. And when you go to conservatories, they tell you nothing about that. I remember graduating from school and saying, I know the craft of acting, but no one has told me how to book the job, how to go in, how to get the audition. I know once you get the job, I know the technique to develop the character. But no one has told me anything about the audition process, booking the job. I felt really gypped in the early stages of my
And I agree. And one of the things that I learned being in that class was every student who came in there who had a manager, the first thing they did was with their money, and I would say a reputable manager, was they had to use that money for a publicist. And
Mm.
I can tell you, sitting in that class with Brad Pitt, his first job, because he was not very good when he started. None of us are. I'm not poking on him, but I'm using him as a wonderful example of how the business works. He did I think it was not Full House. It was the Seavers show. I can't remember what it was. He did a TV show, and that money went to a publicist. And from that, he had just done that thing. From that, they had pictures of him with Robin Givens in at different functions. Now people are saying, "Who's that young blonde guy? Who's that blonde guy?" Then we're seeing him at events. He's doing stuff. Then the next thing he gets is a TV special, after school movies. And then he just took off. And if you look at his career, he has never stopped having a publicist, ever. Even when things are bad, that publicist is churning stuff out. And that is how you maintain a long lasting career. That is something just like you pay rent or mortgage, you pay for your publicist. So that was stuff that I learned, and I saw a lot of actors in there who had certain managers. They had publicists. A lot of them fell off because they didn't continue. They got frustrated, which actors don't realize it's a business. And that's where Acting Smarter comes in. It started out as Common Sense Mamita, because I had acting friends who I just felt like had no common sense. I was like, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" So I started doing these videos based on real things that they would do, that I was like, "Oh no, don't do this. Please don't do this. Don't do this." I go, "Please don't do this." And then it grew into, okay, how do I really help actors with their careers? The talent is just a small part, and most actors think the talent is everything, and then they leave brokenhearted because they go, "I'm more talented than that person." Yes, that may be true, but you have no business sense. And when you have no business sense, you're not going to get in the room. You're not going to get auditions. And if you do get auditions, you're probably not going to get the call back, because you probably haven't set yourself up for success. You think the agent is going to do everything for you, and they don't. And then you're complaining because they don't call you. But did you call them? Have you started a relationship with them? How are you getting out there, meeting the casting directors? Are you submitting the casting directors? Are you focusing on a couple of shows a season that you think you would be right for? And start, find out who the casting director is, find out who the producer is, find out who the regular writers and the TV directors of it. You want people to get to know you. Nobody's going to come looking for you if they don't know who you are. And you then want to be in a class, some kind of acting class, where actors are working actors, not wannabe actors. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that in the beginning, but when you want to be a working actor, you want to be in a class with working actors, and you got to find the money to maintain those classes month to month, because that's a way for you to network. Also, when you're in those classes, you'll have actors that come to you and say, "Hey, Denise, I just read for this movie. You would be right for the part of Mary Jones. The casting director is so and so. Here's the information. Send your stuff." It's a very tight knit community. It's who you know. It's who knows you. It's not about your talent. Yes, put your stuff up on casting.com and Actors Access and all these other sites, but if they don't know you, they're going to scroll past you.
This is amazing advice. Absolutely amazing advice. Where would that actor start? If there is one thing you would say, okay, so I've given you a lay of the land. This is what you've got to do first. What would it be?
The first thing is you have to know what you sell, what your genre is. Are you really good at comedy? Are you good at drama? Are you good in action stuff? I love giving an example of Vin Diesel. Vin Diesel set himself up to win. He saved money. He took a page out of Hollywood Shuffle, saved his money, saved $50,000 to do a little 5-minute short. In that short, he is selling himself. The whole premise is he's an actor in New York, the day in the life of an actor auditioning. So we see him go to 5 different auditions. He's saying to the casting people, this is how you can cast me. That's all that is. It's like he goes up for the tough guy. And in every audition he goes up for, he's in his wife beater. He's not trying to be 20 different characters. He's basically the same guy going in for different parts.
Now,
And
is this footage available on YouTube? For
oh yeah, it's called multifacial. I always tell every actor I work with, watch it, because that is a great example of you setting yourself up to win. That if you can come up with a short idea that works for you, I'm not saying do Vin Diesel because Vin Diesel is Vin Diesel, but watch it and see what kind of short could I do that wraps around what I sell, and keep it real simple. He kept it real simple. It's just him going on a day in the life of an actor, going on auditions in New York City. That is it. He's talking to his agent. He's talking to the casting director. He's talking to the casting assistant. That's it. It's real basic.
It's great advice. It's great advice. And what it makes me do is I want to come back now because I'm going to go around. I'm going to jump back and forth. It just feels natural to just jump around as opposed to go chronologically in your life. I want to go back to what made you know that you were funny, because there is the comedic element that I don't think a lot of people know about you.
Well, I was always funny. I was trying to be funny. My mother suffered from depression. And so I was always trying to lift her up. So it was through jokes. I was always bringing jokes to everybody. It was like, I just thought, we're in an impoverished community. I mean, I didn't know that. I just thought we were poor. We were poor people and everybody was about the drama. So can I bring the funny? And so I would tell stories. I would tell funny stories. I would hear jokes. I would retain them, bring them back. And, it was like always playing jokes on people and stuff like that. And then, yeah, so that was my childhood. It was like, how can I make my mother laugh?
This is absolutely brilliant because there's intentionality with it in it, which then tells me about your proclivity toward staying the course, just being in there, making it happen. Tell me about when you came to California, what that was like, because you came to California in the heyday of California. And most people don't, I don't know if most people know how you came and in the music industry. I want to know how the music industry segued to comedy because you were a comedian, professional comedian who knew all the girls, the stars that are stars now. They were your girls back in the day in the comedy club. So I need to know the trajectory from the time you hit LA and what your comedy career, how that manifested.
Well, at 18, like I said, I worked with House Pageant. I worked in the production end. So for probably about 3 years, and then the fourth year, they were that I worked with Hal. They were going to bring the international pageant to Los Angeles. So we came out. I scouted it out. I was like, "Ooh, this is good." That we stayed in Hollywood at the Roosevelt Hotel, which was seedy as all get up. Hollywood Boulevard at that time was like 42nd Street. I mean, there were hookers everywhere. It was crazy. But that was in 77. So then in 78, they were bringing the pageant back out. And I had a tiff with the general manager at the time at BLS, Dorothy Brunson. Dorothy Brunson did not like me. And so she always made it clear she did not like me. And so one day she cornered me in the bathroom and said, since you're coming here every day, we need to put you to work. And so the promise was, because I worked at the radio station from 13 to 18. And so for the first 4 years, I made $10 a week. That was what I made. God bless Wanda Ramos. She would pay me $10 every week. So it was enough for car fare. And then once I got there, they all fed me. Somebody fed me. I ate. Everything was good. But I would come from school. And in the summer, I worked there from 9 in the morning to 8 at night. I was there until, or 8 at night when Frankie finished his show. And when he wasn't on, then we would leave around 6. But I was there, happy to be there. I would have paid them if I had the money, but I didn't. So anyway, Hal had promised that when I started college, he would put me on payroll. So I went from $10 to $50 a week. And then Dorothy said to me, you're not putting in your hours. I was like, what? So then I went to accounting and I said, so how many hours am I supposed to work a week? Because I think I'm working a lot of hours. And then they said, you could just come and get a paycheck because there's no hours for you. So I went back to her and said, there are no hours for me. And I was a sassy kid. And then she said that, that they were being kind to me so that I wouldn't be a delinquent, something like to that effect. And I was so upset. I left, and everybody was upset that she had done that to me. When that happened, I remember I went to a movie theater, sat there and saw a Spanish movie, like not like a foreign film, but it was in Spanish. And I sat there and I was fuming. I said, I'm going to California. So I came back that Monday because it was like a Friday. I came back that Monday and I told Wanda, when I go with Hal to California for the pageant, I am staying. So I will be going. I will be leaving. I will be giving my notice when I leave. And so, so I came to California with my suitcase. I had made a list of all these people who were saying, when you get to LA, call me. I called all these people and nobody answered me. The only person that was on my list that I did not call, because I said, oh, he's the owner of a company. He if they don't answer me, he's not going to answer me. So I was we were staying at the Roosevelt Hotel for the pageant, and he called Hal's room, and I answered the phone, and he said, I'm looking for you. This was Cecil Holmes, who was co-owner of Casablanca Records. He says, you've been here a week. You haven't called me. I told you to call me. He said, Monday, I need you to come to the company and we're going to give you a job.
Well, I already know, but I need the audience to know who was signed to Casablanca Records.
So we had Donna Summer, we had Kiss, we had Cameo, we had Parliament, we had Cher, we had Casey and the Sunshine Band, or maybe it was just Casey. We had Captain and Tennille. Who else did we have? Village People.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we had all these people.
Okay, I needed the audience to know the backstory. So you go to.
I go to Casablanca. I meet with HR. I fill out an application, and I started that next day. God bless Cecil Holmes. Yes. And I was there about 2 years, and then there were layoffs because they sold the company to Polydor Records, Polygram. And when they made the sale, they laid off a lot of people. Sure. And I was one of the people shortly after. They didn't do it right away, but within a few months they were doing layoff. They were getting a sense of who they could dispose of. And so I was, every department, they had to cut somebody, and I was the one that was getting cut from that department. So
no more Casablanca. What did you do?
At that time, I had already started acting. When I got to Casablanca, I started taking classes, acting classes, which I found in the phone book. I thought the biggest ad must represent the biggest and best school. And so I went and took classes at a place called Theater of Arts. I started doing extra work, and I had decided I'm going to do extra work for 6 months. So I could, that was my time frame. 6 months. That way I can see the lay of the land on set, do whatever. I probably did maybe 6 things. So I would take off. They would let me off at Casablanca to do the extra work. And then I said, that's it. And then I started looking for an agent. I got an agent, got my first job. I had done extra work on One Day at a Time, which got me into AFTRA, not SAG. It was AFTRA. And then once I was in AFTRA, then I my first acting job in episodic was Hill Street Blues. That got me my SAG card. And then I got my SAG card, and then we went on strike. It was the big 1980 strike. We were on strike for 9 months. But I got my card, I had an agent, got in the union, and then I was acting. So when I left Casablanca, I worked for Patrice Russian's production company for a year. Well, maybe it was like 9 months. And then Inner City Broadcasting, which owned BLS, bought 2 radio stations out here. And I was asked if I wanted to come back as their music director for the 2 stations. So I went back. I was there about maybe 6 years, 5 years, something like that, 4 or 5 years.
People need to know who Patrice Rushen is.
Oh, Patrice Russian did Forget Me Nots. Will Smith turned into the Man in Black. And then Kirk Franklin took one of her songs, and then he did. I can't think of the song at the moment. Patrice was huge, incredible, who then went on to be a music
For
director for
Prince.
shows and
For Prince.
everything.
She
Yeah,
worked very,
and
very
she now
closely with.
she now is a professor at USC.
Yes. I just had to give her due when we mention names for this generation, this current generation. It's just they just have to know who these people are.
Yeah, and she was another angel for me, because now we get into the stand up. When I started to do stand up, even though I only worked with Patrice for about 9 months, less than a year, I always stayed in touch, and we would go to events together, because I was friends also with her husband, and he was an actor. And so we'd go to support his shows. And, you get into these little communities, these little tribes. And so when I started doing stand up, I had been doing it like 6 months. And I told Patrice I was doing stand up, and she said, you could open for me and Ndugu Chancellor. And so everywhere in Los Angeles that she and Ndugu played, I got to open for them. And at the time, I didn't have more than like 8 minutes of material. So I remember opening for her at a club in Long Beach, and I didn't know they had 2 shows back to back, but they didn't clear the house because it was a Thursday night. And so I come back out with my routine, and the audience, oh, we already heard that. I said, well, you're going to have to hear it again. I'm sorry. That's all I got. So what it did was it made me start, I gotta write more material. Most of the gigs she did were usually Friday, Saturdays, and they were small venues, so they would clear the room. But yeah, she was such a blessing to me. She gave me such an opportunity. Oh my God. She encouraged me, her and Ndugu, who was a most brilliant drummer. Patrice is a most brilliant pianist, but he was a most brilliant drummer. And Patrice's producer, Charles Mims Jr., I can't leave him out, because he was always they were always supportive of me, always. So they helped me in the beginning of my stand up. And then as I was doing stand up, I started to see that there were really not a lot of women, and if they gave one woman a spot a night, that was it. So if you weren't picked, you weren't going to get on that night. So there was a comedian she had been a actress stunt woman. She started doing comedy the same time I did, Cha-Cha Sandoval. She was always talking about wanting to start a group, and I'm not the person to be telling you want to start something, because then I go, okay, I'm tired of hearing you want to start it, let's just do it. So we went out and we went and looked to see who the comedians were, and we started a group called Funny Ladies of Color. And we started out in Encino at a club called LA Cabaret. I approached the owner, Ray Bishop. I said, hey, can we get your slowest night of the week and split the door with you, and you get the drinks? And that's how we started there. And we were there for a year. I brought in a former agent to manage us, and she was great at getting press. And so within the year that we were there, we had gotten a bunch of press. And then Cha-Cha was able, because she was working out of the Comedy Store, she was able to get us into the Comedy Store to have a weekly show. And so we were up in the belly room. God bless Mitzi Shore, the owner of the Comedy Store. She let
Pauly
us be in
Shore's
there. And
mom.
yes,
Mhm.
yes, and Sammy Shore's ex-wife. And she let her, that's how she got the store, because I was in the divorce deal. Um, and she let us, she let us do our show there every Tuesday night. We just had to bring the audience.
Wow.
It was great. So she got the two drinks. And most of the nights we didn't have much of an audience, but we kept doing our thing. And then from that, I left that group, and then a Latina comic who was a very well-known telenovela actress, who had come to Los Angeles to make her way and started doing comedy because she had to go on welfare. She was this big star in Latin America, and then in Los Angeles could not get anything. So she started doing stand up. So she approached me and said, hey, you want to do a Latina show? You already know how to do it. You just did it with this other show. So we started a show called Hot and Spicy Mamitas. And we did it for 6 years. We went on tour. We got we did a CD that's still available on Spotify, on Apple. It's available everywhere. And it was the hottest show. It was the hottest show in Los Angeles. It was the first of its
What
kind.
no, what year are we talking? What year? What decade?
We're talking the mid 1990s. We're now in the mid 1990s up until 2000. And we would sell out at the Improv. We would sell out at the Comedy Store. We did the main room at the Comedy Store. We sold out at the Ice House, at the Laugh Factory. I mean, if we were performing, the audience would come. It was the most amazing thing. And we would always have a man MC. And if they went on too long, the audience would start booing them and demand that we come, bring the girls on. Yeah. And we got a lot of press from that. I mean, we got so much press from Hot and Spicy Mamitas. And the Spanish press would come all the time, and we're like, look, we don't speak Spanish in this is English. But they would interview us. So it was wonderful.
And that's what brings me to talking about your movie career.
Like I said, when I got here, I kind of had a sense of what it was that I sold. And being at Casablanca, I was able to nail it. This is what I sell. It wasn't up to the agent I knew what I was selling. So I was booking a lot of work because I knew what I was selling.
Which was, you knew what you were selling, which was what?
I was either the young victim, the young urban kid, or the smart aleck. And because I looked like I was 14, I was able to get roles as the high school student. And I kept working as a teen until I was 35. And then I said, I don't want to do it anymore. I booked Stand and Deliver when I was 28 years old.
And how old were you playing?
I was playing 16, 17.
What was that experience like?
Well, it was a learning experience. There were good things, there were bad things. Well, the good things were that I got to be on a film for pretty much almost 6 straight weeks. We worked a lot. I mean, we worked a lot. It was a small, low budget film. I had an amazing time with the cast. We're still friends. Most of us are still, all the kids, we're still friends to
It
this
was
day.
critically acclaimed.
Um, it was. So there were good things. The negative thing was I was already an adult, and then people talk to you like you're a kid. So I would have to say, excuse me, that's the character I play, but that's not me. And so that was challenging. At that point, I have been in Los Angeles acting almost 10 years.
Wow.
And so there were still things I didn't know. Like if you're having problems on a set, do not get up in anybody's face wanting to start a fight. You call your union rep to come and handle it. I did not know that. Coming from New York, always taking care of myself, feeling like I had to defend myself. Again, having a smart mouth, I wasn't going to let people punk me. And so I would have words with the producer. I would have words with the director. I felt like here I am a professional. Treat me like a professional. You're treating me like I am one of these kids. I understand it's the role, but that's not me. You come to me correct. And then I saw things because I had worked on Hollywood Shuffle before that. And I was wearing a lot of hats for Hollywood Shuffle. For those who don't know, Hollywood Shuffle was an indie film, co-written, directed, produced, and starring Robert Townsend. And so I was doing a lot of stuff. I was doing catering. I was doing babysitting. I was helping with whatever needed help.
You said co-written.
He co-wrote it with Keenan Ivory Wayans. Yes, that was their first film together. They had written other things before that. That was the one that was the first one that
That's what put them on the
made it.
map, essentially.
That's right.
Mhm.
That's right.
Mhm.
And so I got to see how the sausage was made. You know what I'm saying? So then I'm on this film and I'm hearing them talk, and I'm like, yeah, that's not, no, that's not right. Mm-mm. You're lying to me. So then I was giving pushback. And again, if I could go back and do it, I would call my union rep. I would be the best girl on the set. I wouldn't, and I learned from it. That unfortunately, sometimes you got to go through it so okay, we're not going to do this again. But yeah, it was a big learning. It was huge because I had worked on so many projects. I had done the Jeffersons. I did a two-parter. I did a bunch of movies of the week. I had done a bunch of episodics up until that point. So I have been making my living at that time as an actor. I was doing looping. I was doing voiceover. So I was able to sustain my existence because of getting paid.
And you
And
lived in
the
West Hollywood, I might add.
and I was living in West Hollywood. Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. And so the money got funny. The signing time cards got funny, and then I was speaking up, and I was getting accused of messing up their production, and it just got
Messy.
crazy. It got messy, but it taught again. I have to say it was the best experience because I had never dealt with that. First of all, I had been on all these fantastic shows and projects and working with all these people. And so I'm gonna back up for a second. The first project I did was Hill Street Blues, and there was an AD who did not give me my call time, a second AD. So I didn't know, and I went and took a temp job for the next day because I didn't know you're on hold, meaning you can't go anywhere. And so I went and took a temp job, and about 10:30, I'm thinking, doesn't feel right. Nobody called me, blah blah. So I call, and my at that time we had those machines, the voice machines,
Answering machine.
and I the answering machines, and I get the casting. I get my agent, the casting director, then the AD. Where are you? Where are you? We're looking for you. I ran out of that temp job so fast. I'm sorry, I gotta leave. I gotta go.
Mhm.
I ran over to MTM. I get there. I call the agent. I'm on my way. I get there. And then I get in makeup, and the makeup artist said, "What happened to you?" I said, "Nobody gave me a time." He said, "I knew it. That AD, I knew he messed up." So anyway, I get there, I get on set, I do what I need to do. We take a lunch break, and all the extras, and at that time, extras were really professional extras. Like they knew all the rules, all the regulations. So so they take me to lunch at a little taco place outside of the studio, and they schooled me on what I needed to know. You need to keep a little book. You need to write down when you go for fitting, how
Mhm.
long do they use your clothes. You need to keep track of your hours. You write down from the time, your call time, start to your end time. They just gave me so much information that it helped me, and that's what I give to other actors. It's like it's a business. I knew the record business was a business, but that day I learned that acting was a business.
And it's so interesting because a lot of times in interviews, we hear the great stories, and our eyes are open and they're so euphoric. But there's real value in an actor coming in and saying, "This is not a great story, but this is a great story because I learned so much more. It was so valuable because I learned a lesson in real time that someone could have told me about it, but for me to go through it, night and day." 90. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing it and putting it in context, so it's not just something horrific happened to me on set, but putting it in a context
You
of
learn.
learning, right? A learning curve.
Right, because the craft is separate. You are expected to come on set having learned your lines. You should be off book. I have a not being ready on set. I did a Neil Simon movie called Max Dugan Returns, and I was on set. I'll give you two things. One that I learned because I had the experience. The other one, it was right in front of me. But the first thing was that never change your look from the audition to the job,
Your look or your read,
or your
or your
hair, or
read,
yeah,
or your read.
none of that.
What book the job? If you change your read,
Especially as a guest star, or you just have a small role, you're a day player, you better come the way you were in that audition, in that self tape.
that's
That
what they
is what they
hired.
hired. That
Yeah.
is the look they hired.
Yes.
And so I remember I had changed my hairstyle. I mean, and it was nothing major, but I want to say I might have gone from two pigtails to two braids. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was just that simple. And when I got on set, Herbert Ross said to me, "This is not what we hired you for. Put your hair the way you were in the audition." I was like, "Yes, sir," right away. And then when we were on set, this was before we started shooting. I mean, I had got, because when you get on set, usually the director gives you a once over, make sure everything is good. And he was like, "Nope, that's not it." And then when we were on set, we had a little rehearsal right before we getting ready to shoot. And one of the actors started improvising the lines. He stopped and he said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, I'm doing the lines." He said, "Those are not Neil Simon's words. He said, "Do you know the script?" And the kid was silent. And he shut down the set for an hour, or maybe at least a half an hour. And the kid had to go, the young actor had to go off in a corner with the script supervisor and learn the lines that Neil Simon wrote. And that was early in my career. I was like, I will never
My heart is pounding. My
rewrite,
heart is pounding right now just hearing it.
because he could have fired him. He could have just fired him, but he was very gracious and just sent him off. And it was an actor who worked all the time, but no one ever called him on it, you know. And so I hope it was a gift for him.
Indeed. But changing Neil Simon's lines are like changing Shakespeare.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, it was.
and to be perfectly fair, writers, there's nothing arbitrary when it comes to text. It's not an arbitrary line. Everything is a part of a whole, and you've got to honor the text. That's the first thing. That's the
Yeah,
first rule of thumb. Honor the text.
unless the director gives you permission to change
If
it.
that's the case, then it's a collaboration, and then yes,
Yeah,
go for it. But
because sometimes I've been on set where the directors said, you know what, this is a clunky line. How would you say that line? You know, let me hear how you would say it.
not of your own volition, not to come in and improvise.
No,
But
no,
these
yeah.
are these are just great stories. Who have you met in your career that has left an indelible impression on you? Either became a mentor or, someone like a Patrice Rushen, but an actor or an actress that has really sort of taken you by the hand and become a mentor.
Off the bat, I would say two people. The first one was Max Julian, who wrote Thomasine and Bushrod, who wrote Cleopatra Jones. And when I was coming to Los Angeles, Wanda Ramos called Max because they were good friends, and she said, Lydia's coming. And I had met him in New York. He was very kind to me. She said, Lydia's coming out there. I need you to watch out for her. And he was amazing. He would come and pick me up from my brother's house in Pasadena on Saturday mornings, take me to we would go out to Santa Monica Pier. We would talk about acting. He wanted to know what I was doing, what auditions, everything. He just embraced everything I was doing. And then we would go to Westwood. At the time, Westwood was like happening at UCLA, but it was like the place because people didn't walk in Los Angeles, and that was an area where you could just walk around. We would walk around and we would just chat. And he was always encouraging me in my acting. And then he was raising money for the last film he was working on. I don't think it ever was finished, but he cast me in it. So I got to work on that. And he was as kind as a director as he was a mentor.
Can you give this generation a bit more of a backstory of into who Max Julian was? Because he's iconic and we know him, but I need you to talk a little bit more about.
Goldie. Well, Max Julian was an early renegade in film. And he had done the Mac,
And we're
and
talking the
then
black exploitation era
black
film.
exploitation
Mhm.
during the 70s. He had done the Mac. He then wrote a movie called Thomasine and Bushrod, which was a Western version of Bonnie and Clyde, a black Western version with Vanetta McGee. And it is
It's a
amazing.
classic with an amazing soundtrack, which all of those films had.
And then he wrote a Cleopatra Jones. So we had the
Starring
first
Tamara
black,
Dixon.
yeah, the first black action. She was a fighter. She did all this stuff.
She was a badass.
She was a bad, yeah.
Mhm.
Not like not like Pam Greer's Foxy
No,
Brown. She was more upscale, more, she was like the female Shaft.
yes.
And he was also really excellent about having little artist salons in his home. uh he would have different actors in his home, the evening they would, he would have them over and they'd have food, he always invited them. So it was like black actors, black directors, black, up and coming people who were veterans. It was just he was just yeah, he was just so gracious, so loving, so giving. I can only speak for myself, right? That's what he did for me. And so he was one of my mentors, and I would call Cheryl Lee Ralph a mentor of sorts. We had worked on a film called Sister Margaret and the Saturday Night Ladies. And Sister Margaret was played by Bonnie Franklin, who was the star of One Day at a Time, yes. And then the ladies were myself, Rosemary Clooney, Cheryl Lee Ralph, Trezana Beverly, who had won
A
the
Tony
Tony
Award
for Color
for colored
Girls.
girls who've committed suicide, considered suicide when the rainbow is enough.
Yes, Maria O'Brien, who was her father was a big star. I get confused of which one he was, but she was in it. Janetta Arnett, who was in Boys Don't Cry,
Yeah.
she played the mother, and we had the incredible Harold Sylvester, who was in it. I had the best time on that film. It didn't do very well. It was a TV movie. It didn't do well at all. But I had the best time, and Cheryl Lee and I bonded our first day on set because we were shooting in San Francisco, and the day before we started shooting, the producer took us to lunch in San Francisco once we got there, and then he gave us our per diem, and Cheryl Lee said, "I'm going shopping." I said, "I'm going shopping with you." And that's how we bonded. And she taught me a lot about being on set, that as a person of color, and especially if you're not the star of the project, bring your makeup, do your own
Mm.
stuff, do not expect them to do anything for you. You come camera ready. And she just taught me a lot. Her ethics regarding working on set was amazing, and you see the career that she's had, and she and I just we were friends for a very long time, and she just was constant and consistent, and I loved that. Like she knew who she was, she knew what she sold, and that's what she gave you, and she was very conscientious about money. Like from her, I learned to go to the 99-cent store, I learned to go to bargain places. She would go shopping, but she was very practical. And that taught me a lot. And I've had a couple of actor friends that were working at the time, because even though I'd done that movie and even though I was working a lot, I for a long time I still had a day job,
Sure. Oh, that's not
because
surprising. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so I still had a day job. So I just started learning from her and other actors about the finances, because there are highs and lows, right? You get a big check and then you don't work for a period of
Right.
time.
Yes.
And you could go a whole year without working. I went a season, I was up for 7 pilots, and it came down to me and one other person. I didn't book any of that. I thought I was a failure. And here's what I would say to actors: you're not a failure. They were looking for something different. Your talent got you to that place, but the look, they were painting a picture. Like I always lost out either height, I wasn't dark enough, I was too dark, my hair was too curly, my hair was, there were just, it had nothing to do with my talent. And I remember a lead actor in one of the pilots that I was up for, he fought hard for me. But at the end of the day, director said he's too, he's like, look, you're too tall, she's too short. Camera wise, it is not going to work. And so that was something that happened early on in my career, and I wish someone had walked me through that process to say it has nothing to do with your talent. Let it go. It's between you and somebody else. You don't book it, or you get on a job and you get fired, because sometimes they miscast. They think they want something, and then you're there, and then they're like, that's not working, and they'll swap you. And this happened to me twice. I was on one thing and it just wasn't working, and I knew it wasn't working, but I was like determined, I'm gonna make this work. And then I lasted a week. My determination got me to be there for a whole week, and then they call my agent and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, tell her not to come in tomorrow." And then a few years later, I did a pilot, and the star of it didn't like any actors, and he was systematically getting rid of actors every day. I lasted on that pilot 10 days until my number came up. But the wonderful thing was I saw what he was doing. So when it came to me, I was like, okay, it's my time. And so I went, that one didn't devastate me like the first one did, because by that time I had, I knew that it has nothing to do with talent. If they hire you, it's because they're confident that you can do the job. Unless you come in and you come in late, or you're blowing your lines or whatever. But if you come in prepared and you're there, usually it has to do with a look. It has to do with
Yes.
there's something else.
An overall aesthetic that they didn't see until they got everybody there. Which brings me to another really important question. How important is your spiritual practice in in all of this?
Huge. And as I get older, it gets even more predominant, because in this business you have to have an anchor. In my 20s, my energy and my determination got me a long way, but in my 30s I needed God, because all of a sudden everything I could get away with in my 20s I could no longer get away with in my 30s. I started to lose my confidence, because as I started to get 30, that's when I had the whole thing of being, going up for seven things, not getting it. And so as you get a little older, even though I was playing young, even though, I was still playing young, there was a shift that was happening, and I was losing my confidence. There were too many things in my head. I started doing stand up. So on one end, the stand up was sustaining me, but in my acting, it was tanking, because I was not feeling it. Not that I loved acting, I loved it, but didn't, I felt the imposter syndrome, right? The imposter syndrome starts coming up. You have to have God. And it wasn't until I was 35 that I connected with a evangelist who had a Bible study for artists in Hollywood named Tim Story. And he really just changed my view on the fact that no, God created you to be an artist. You don't, you don't listen to what anybody says, because people and some of the were people in church who would say, well, maybe you're not supposed to be doing this, maybe you're not supposed to be in Hollywood, that's of the devil. So I was hearing so there was like all this confusion going on, and then I got mad at God. I was like, look, I'm doing this. And so, and he never said not to do it. And it was through Tim's guidance that I started to understand, wait a minute, God would never give you a gift that he would withhold from you to do it. That's the whole purpose of him imbuing you with certain gifts, is so you can do that. And so I started to learn that, and I started to understand that we all come with different callings. We all come with different gifts. Are we walking in that gift as we are being the best cucumber we can be? That's the thing. And to go, I don't have to I don't have to be a desperate actor. because sometimes you go in there desperate, whatever you want, what do you want me to do? And it's like, just bring you, and then they will alter you, they will adjust if they want something different, but make hot choices, which is what I learned with Roy London, was make the hottest choice you can in everything you do. Put up the heat. And then if you do it and you feel it's still not working, find something that's even hotter and bring it. Bring it. You got to bring the goods. You got to be present. You got to do that. So I started to get it. It was like I lost it for a period of time, and getting close to God, and being able to have that hard conversation with God, because I was angry at God. I was feeling everybody is working, I'm not working. I have to take another job now. Blah blah. I was so resentful what was going on. And then it was like, oh, okay, you haven't left me. That scripture that says, I will never, in Joshua chapter 1, where he says, I am with you. Be brave, be courageous, for I am with you wherever you go. Do not be afraid, do not be dismayed. I will never leave you, I will never forget about you, I will never lose my grip on you. And I just started walking with that scripture, that I would just read, I would just say that to myself over and over. It became my mantra. Wait a minute, that's not who God is. God doesn't work like that. And I also, in my 30s, really started to delve into the Bible for myself, because what I learned, I didn't grow up in church. I mean, I went to Catholic school, but that wasn't, so I didn't grow up in a religious home. And so in my 30s, I really started digging in, reading the Bible. Then I started teaching the Bible, because it was like, people are saying things, but that's not what God says. I want to know what the text says, because you got a version of God, she's got a version of God, but I want God. So how do we get there? So I started teaching Bible studies out of my home, and then I started teaching Bible studies to teenagers, and then I started teaching Bible studies to single women, whether they were single moms or just single women, so that I could learn more, because I needed to learn more. What better way to learn, by you having to teach somebody, right? Because while you're teaching, you're learning. I had to prepare the lessons.
I just said that one of my students, one of my clients who studied with me years ago, but studied with me for an extensive period of time, he came to me and said that someone has come to him and would like to study voice and speech. And I gave him a full on endorsement. I said, you know enough now to teach. You really do. And it will make your knowledge of what you're teaching deeper and richer. I completely agree with you. I think when you get to the point where, I mean, I don't want to say mastered, I think you should bring in people in community to talk about the word, to discuss it, to have an open discussion about how it affects you. Because to your point, if we've got 50 people reading the same text, we're going to get 50 variations of what that text is. And let's come together and not decide what it is, but what it is for me is what you're saying. What it does for me.
You just said something. Not only does it speak differently to the 50 people, but every time you read it, it speaks differently to you, because you're evolving. you know you're evolving, that every time you read that word, it is a light unto your path. That he says, there's a light unto my feet. The Bible is a living, breathing word to me. I can't speak for anybody, but to me, it is a living, breathing word. And every time I go in that word, it is life to me. It is speaking to me. It calms me, it heals me, it invigorates me, it motivates me. It just sets me ready for the day. And so for anybody in the business, no matter what your craft is, I would say find the spiritual anchor. Maybe it's not Christianity, maybe it's Buddhism, maybe it's Hindu. I'm not trying to convert anybody. I did that when I was in my early 20s. I would elbow people to the altar. I don't do that no more. But I would just say find what works for you and brings you peace. The Because as an artist, you need to enjoy in peace. Creativity only works when you're open, right? If you're closed-fisted, if you're anxious, if you're scared, it doesn't work unless that's the character.
And then if that's the character, you've got to be at peace to find their angst, you know? You can't bring
Yeah,
your
so
angst to their angst, you know?
yeah.
Where would people find you? How do people find you? Do you coach individual people? What does your
Yes.
business look like? Because I think everybody in in the world should know who you are and take advantage of not just your knowledge, but your expertise. You've been around.
I do coach. I have a 3 hour session that I'll do with actors who don't have a clue of their brand. Or I just finished coaching this amazing this amazing man who had been acting for 15 years, and he was all over the place. He didn't have the right pictures, his resume was not formatted right. I mean, everything was wrong. I just applauded him for the fact that he still could work with everything wrong, but he wasn't booking the right kind of work. Because when you're not prepared, and you sign with an agent, they're going to submit you for everything, and it hurts you as an actor. It hurts you. So that's a thing that I teach. It's 3 hours. Also, getting ready to start a community for actors to meet once a week, because there's something about being in a supportive community where you can talk about, from materials to you had an audition, or how to go about contacting. So it's business focused, but it's also actor focused to kind of help actors through those bumps that you experience in the business. And then I have the podcast Acting Smarter Now, and you can find it Apple, Spotify. If you go to YouTube channel, I have a YouTube channel called Lydia Nicole Live. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook, Acting Smarter Now, TikTok, Lydia Nicole. Also, I have a book planner, my Acting Smarter planner. So it's a year planner. I'm getting ready to put out one for 3 months to give tracking sheets on if you're meeting with agents, to write down everything you talked about, how you felt. I have little emojis for that particular section. You can go to my website, Acting Smarter Now, and order it. And then the 3 month one will be out very soon.
But this one that's already available, it's the annual. It's from January to December.
Yeah, but you can, I mean, you can use it anytime. You can start it
Oh,
anytime.
okay.
I also have it in a digital form for those people who don't want to carry a book. It's in digital. You can get that now as well. Go to actingsmarternow.com and pick up your digital copy. And so there are a lot of great tracking pages in there, like also helping you. What shows would you like to be considered for this season? You write it down. Industry people you've met. It's a great place to keep everything. So let's say you went on an audition 2 months ago, and because you went on that audition, you wrote down what you wore, you took a selfie, you put it up on the digital planner, and you didn't hear from them, and all of a sudden they call you. Now they want you to come back in. You have all that information. You're not trying to figure out, oh my god, I don't even remember what I look like, I don't remember anything. So and all of it is based on, I've been doing this. I was making these planners for myself for about 20 years, almost 30. And then I had some actor friends who periodically would say, can you make one for me? And so I published it so I could, have it available for actors. But it's a great
This
resource.
is
Great
wonderful, and
resource.
it brings me to we're winding down a bit now, and this has just been so much, not just fun. It's been like soul food. It has warmed my soul to be in conversation with you, because you've been there, done that, and it begs me to ask the question about the more seasoned actor who's hit a wall. You talked about working with younger actors who don't have a clue. What about the more seasoned actor?
But you have seasoned actors who don't have a clue
But
either.
I'm
They've
talking
been
about the seasoned
fortunate.
actors who do have a clue. And they would then set aside money to work with someone quite like, oh, they hit a wall, they're stuck. And the money that they would take to work with a therapist or a life coach, this is what it seems to me would be prime for you to come in and be a career coach for someone who's
Oh, and I help the veteran actor as well. A lot of times it is about the veteran actor reinventing themselves and getting out of their comfort zone. Sometimes what happens with veteran actors, especially if they've gone through a long period where they've worked, there's almost a sense of entitlement. They feel like it is owed them, but it is not. You have to reinvent yourself. You have to keep reinventing yourself. You have to stay sharp. You have to be taking acting classes or some kind of class to keep you limber. Again, it's staying in community, right? What happens with a lot of established actors, they get to a certain point, they feel they don't need training anymore. So then they step out of that community. They have their little inner circle. They're used to their agents calling them with stuff. Now the agent's not calling. How are you getting the jobs? Because the agent gets 10%. So that means you got to do 90% of the work. How are you networking? What are you doing? Best way that I know is either being in an acting class, keeping yourself sharp, or doing plays. Getting out there and auditioning for plays, or producing your own play, producing your short, producing your web series, being a producer of your work so that people can see what you are doing now. The type of work that I did, my first 20 years in Los Angeles, I can't do that now. So part of me doing the Acting Smarter now podcast is also rebranding myself, because I had stepped away from acting on the regular and started producing. I started producing early on because I was not going to wait by the phone. I didn't have that luxury to wait. So I would do acting showcases. I would produce my own acting showcase. I would get maybe 11 friends and we would do 6 scenes and we would rent a space. Now you can do it on Zoom, but rent a space, invite producers and casting directors and everybody to come to see your work. How will they know what you're doing if they don't see you? So, what are you doing to put yourself out there? Get your smartphone and shoot a little monologue and put it up on your social media page. Hey, I'm working on this scene from A Streetcar Named Desire. Let me know your thoughts. But put stuff out that you're going to slam, so that even if you get somebody to give you some nasty feedback, it's not a bother, because you're going to get haters. But or you did a scene in a class, or you did a table read and you like that character, so you take a little monologue from that and you work on it and you put it up. You get coached. Seasoned actors must continue to get coached. Don't assume you know it all, because you can't see all the facets of that part when you're doing it. It's always easy for me to see something when I'm not in it. It's just like that for everybody. Me, the last 2 years, or the last year and a half, I've been making my way back into acting, which is how I found you, because I want to take my show and put it back up, my one person show. And you have been phenomenal in helping me find my voice again. Because as a producer, I lost my acting voice. I lost my, you're producing, you're about putting out fires, you're about speaking to help somebody else. So you're not inward in yourself. And I would say that this last year, walking with you as my teacher, as my guide, as my everything person, I am back in my actor body and it feels amazing. But had I tried to do it by myself, I would continue to wait and wait and wait. That's why you need a coach. You need coaching. When we see people getting awards, do not be deceived. They're getting awards because they got coached to the period of that every sentence in that script. Nobody made it to the awards not having been coached, because studios are not going to invest in actors who don't look award ready.
You know, my light, as you can see, the sun is setting and it's getting darker and darker and darker. Before we close, I just want folks to know one more time where they can find you, because I need people to come to you, because you are, in my opinion, you are the real deal, but you're the whole package.
Thank you. Go to actingsmarternow.com, and you can find me. You can email me. I am pretty accessible. Unless you're crazy, then I'm not. I would end this by saying, if you need a fantastic voice coach, Denise Woods is the one. And if you can't afford coaching right now, get her tape, because just the tape will keep you on point for what you need just for the moment.
Thank
It
you,
will really
sweetheart.
help.
And it's
Yes.
speakitclearly.com, and it's the Speak It Clearly CD. It really is. I mean, if you can't afford coaching, it's the kind of thing that you really should just plug it in your car, download it, and then you do a warm up every day. This has been amazing. Absolutely
Thank you.
amazing. Absolutely
Thank you.
amazing.
This was such a treat for me. Thank you so much. I am so grateful to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the Lydia Nicole.
Well, that's it for today's episode of Acting Smarter Now. This conversation today was a little personal, but purposeful. And I think it was powerful. But I need to know what resonated for you. So let me know in the comments below. And if this episode or this program supports you, inspires you, and gives you clarity, please help us fuel the journey by buying me a cup of coffee to keep this show going strong. If you can't buy me a coffee, then subscribe, like, and share. And don't go anywhere, because coming up is another episode packed with tools to help you move with intention and take your career from undiscovered to unstoppable.